Perfect. Okay, so we're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Lions Lounge Lockdown, episode 67. Millwall legend, Bryan King. Bryan, thanks for your time, mate.
No problem.
We're just having a bit of a chat off screen about a funny story we'll get to. But before that was that when you got to Millwall. We'll wind it back a bit. You started at Chelmsford City. I'm assuming they're like a non-league outfit back then.
Well, that was the league that was the closest to the league, because clubs could then apply from the Southern League or the Northern League, to come into the Football League. Chelmsford got in a bit of trouble because they took a very famous player from Wolves called Bobby Mason on a free transfer, and he cost Wolves 30 grand. Cool. I mean, he was a big name in the 60s, and he was the cause where clubs voted against Chelmsford every time they applied to come in the league.
I've heard about this. You couldn't just get promoted. You had to be, you had to win the vote to get in the league.
That's right. All the clubs would vote for you or against you. And the majority for was less than against for Chelmsford, because Chelmsford had a good ground, nice stadium. They were a professional team. We had, I think, 18 full-time professionals there.
Oh, nice.
There was 12 apprentices. And I became part. I was playing for the school and stuff in Stansted, and we played in the Bishop Stortford Schools League. I got selected for Hertfordshire, which led me to be then selected for the North against South, which was played at Birmingham City's ground. And there was a lad called Alan Tatum from St Albans who was with me for the South. There's a goalkeeper called Alan Ogley who went on to play for Man City. For the North, Howard Kendall was in the Northern team. Glenn Pardo from Man City was in the Northern team as a schoolboy. John Sissons was in my team and went on to play for West Ham and Norwich and whatever. So, but I didn't get selected for the first international, which was going to be played at Wembley. I think it was England, West Germany. And Alan Tatum did. I don't know whatever happened to Alan Tatum at St Albans, but I know Alan Ogley had a good career. And Alan Tatum played in the second international at Wembley against Wales. And of course, they said thank you very much to me. And I trotted off back to Bishop Stortford, Stansted, and never thought much about it, really. I got to the final trial, so I was pleased with that. But the following year, in '63, all those boys who never got selected for the England schoolboy team received a letter to ask if you'd like to be a ball boy for the England against the rest of the world at Wembley. So, of course, I said yes.
How old was you at that point?
Pardon?
How old was you at that point?
Well, I was 16.
Right.
So I said yes. Had to get a couple of trains over to Wembley, met up at Wembley, and we were all put on our grey tracksuits and plimsolls, and off we went. And of course, my first half, I was standing behind Lev Yashin's goal. Can you believe that? Lev Yashin from Russia, certainly one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. So I was behind his goal first half, and second half, I had Gordon Banks.
Jesus.
So I was behind his goal in the second half. And anything that went either side of the goal post or over the bar, I had to go run and get the ball and throw it back to the necessary man.
So was you throwing yourself about, giving it some of that?
Not really, no. You're all on that sort of asphalt stuff anyway, and we had to give the tracksuits back after we finished, so they wouldn't expect any grass or dirt on them. But it was a great experience seeing all those fantastic players and actually being within sort of touching distance of them. And for me, who wanted to be a goalkeeper, to see probably the two best goalkeepers of all time during the 60s was absolutely marvellous. But I then had a chance to play for Bishop Stortford and Stansted, but neither side showed any enthusiasm. Young kids, 16, 17. So I got picked for Essex under 17s or under 18s. And the referee was the secretary of Chelmsford City, called Len Manhennick, his name was. And he said to me, he contacted a family friend of ours and asked if he knew the Kings who lived in Stansted. And he said he did. He said, well, could you get the boy to come over? Because we're going to start a youth team.
Right.
And I went to Chelmsford. I was working as an apprentice electrician as well at the time.
Oh, really?
And combined my £9 a week as an apprentice electrician to the 11 or 12 quid I was getting a week from Chelmsford City. And it weren't a bad wage in 1964, 65.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, I was earning more than my dad. And he was an airframe fitter up at Stansted Airport. Wow. I worked 42 hours a week. I was doing 40 hours at the electricity board and another 12 hours at the football club. I didn't have a car. It was bus, bicycle, whatever to get over to Chelmsford. 24 miles one way, 24 back.
Jesus.
I'd summer lift, catch a bus. If I missed the last bus, I'd have to walk it and try and summer lift home. Get home about 1 o'clock in the morning, up at 5, on my way to work again at 6. I mean, it's things like that that make you appreciate it when you do actually become a professional footballer.
That's some serious graft. Like people, but kids these days wouldn't have that in them, would they?
Well, I used to bike 3 miles to Bishop Stortford from my home in Stansted, and I'd wait for the van there, go to Arlo, do a day's work, back to Bishop Stortford, leave my bike in the yard, catch the bus to Chelmsford, get back from Chelmsford. I'll be home about 1 o'clock in the morning. It was, but you just wanted to do it because, I, as I say, my dream was always to be a pro footballer. And when we played Southend United in the final of the Essex Professional Cup, that night was a memorable night. Okay, we lost after extra time, 3-2, but that was the night that the manager, Harry Ferrier, who had won the championship twice with Portsmouth, he was our manager, Harry, at the time. Bill Frith had gone. And it was just, Harry called me. He called me to the side. He said, look, there's been a couple of managers here tonight watching the game. He said, 2 of them would like to talk to you. One's Bill Nicholson at Tottenham.
Yeah.
And one is Benny Fenton from Millwall. So I said, well, I'll go, I'll have a word with him. Of course I will. And I spent about 5 minutes with dear old Benny. Spent the same with Bill Nick, who was, of course, was a big name. Benny Fenton was a big name in football. So, as his brother Ted was manager of West Ham, and dear old Benny he played a lot of games for Charlton and Colchester and stuff. And I got home, and there's no mobiles in them days, of course.
Yeah. We
get a call on the home line, and my dad answers the phone, and he said, "Who is it?" He said, "It's Mr. Fenton. Can I speak to Bryan?" He said, "What do you want to talk to him about?" He said, "Well, I might want to make him a professional footballer." So my dad said, "Are you having a laugh or what?" He said, No, serious, Mr. King, serious. He said, "Hang on, I'll get him." So he come on, Benny, and he said, "Is there any chance I could speak to you?" I said, "Yeah, could we make it sort of tomorrow? I'd only just got home from work,
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, I was thinking about it now, actually." I said, "But you're in London, aren't you?" He said, "No, I'm at the end of your road," he said, "in the phone box." And sure enough, 5 minutes later, he's knocking on our door.
Wow.
And what's he got? Big bunch of flowers for my mum.
Perfect.
and enough bullshit to sink the Titanic. I mean, wonderful bloke, absolutely marvellous. And he said, look, I don't want to leave this. I don't want to leave your house until I've got your signature on a contract. And I said, well, how are you going to do that? He said, well, everything's done. He said, I've got everything. Everything's ready. Gordon Borland has made it all ready for me. Will you sign? He said, I daren't let you go to Tottenham. I daren't let you go anywhere else. He said, you're my first signing for the summer.
Had he just become the manager then at that point?
No, he'd been there a year.
I'd been there a year. Okay.
Been there a year. And he said, I want to build a young side. I've got certain players I want to bring in. I've got some good young players here already and some good experienced players. He said, have you heard about Millwall? I said, yeah. Funnily enough, Peter Shreves and Ken Jones, who was playing for Millwall at the time, Peter and Ken were quite good friends. And, they said to me, look, if you're going to go to Tottenham at this time, you're probably going to break the record for football combination reserve games. So I said, what do you say that for? He said, well, you've obviously read the papers. You know who's gone to Tottenham. It's a young lad from Ireland called Pat Jennings.
I was just about to say, was Pat Jennings there?
Yeah, so I said, oh, right. He said, if you're going to go there, I can't see you getting much of a chance with Spurs, honest to God, unless he's injured. He said, but Millwall, they've just sold Alex Stepney. They've got a senior goalkeeper called Laurie Leslie, who's in his 30s. And I think, or they thought that I'd get a chance early. And of course, after I spoke to Benny, he said, I want you to be my first team goalkeeper. It might take a couple of months or a year or whatever, but this is what I'm prepared to offer you. And certainly wasn't mind-blowing money, what you see today being thrown around.
When you go to become a full-time, you're then going to lose your electrician's money as well.
But I just qualified as an electrician.
Oh, really?
Because I was 19 then, and I'd done my 4 years. And the boss of the Eastern Electricity Board was a fellow called Royce, Mr. Royce. Initially, I'd asked him when I joined Chelmsford if I could have a little bit of extra time off, for matches and training. And he said, yes, you can, but you've got to play for our works team.
Yeah.
So I said, well, that's okay. Anyway, we've done well in that. We got to the All England finals at Watford, Vicarage Road. But I couldn't play in it. Because I was playing for Chelmsford. But he was very good. I went to see him and I told him the story about what's happening. He said, well, there's a job here for you because you're now an electrician and there is a place here for you. But the draw of professional football has always been your aim, isn't it? And I said, yeah, as it really is, come from a small place in Essex.
So when you was doing, like you said, you was working all these hours and you was getting in at 1 a.m. and getting up and going, was it always in your mind that I'm going to put this graft in because I am going to become a footballer, or was you just doing it because,
No, I thought myself, this was a good standard of football. I was working and playing with players who'd been professionals and good professionals.
I was going to ask you, do you think Benny Fenton had been watching you for a long time?
I think he'd seen more than one game because he had no doubt. He had no doubt. He told me, Mum and Dad, he told me, he will play in the league. He said, and I guarantee, within 6 months, he'll be playing for Millwall first team. You think, yeah, well, all right, we believe that when it happens. But I got to the Den and that was an eye-opener. I caught the train from Stansted to Liverpool Street to Whitechapel to New Cross Gate, walked down from New Cross Gate, and there's the old Den. Jesus Christ, it's no better than Chelsea City by the look of it from the outside. But all I can say is that once you get in there, and when there's a crowd in there, you can't write it, you can't speak about it because it's unbelievable. The atmosphere at the old Den was unbelievable. And to experience it as early as I did, I'd only been there a month, well, just over a month. I've been training full time. I got to hate Greenwich Park, although I've walked around there several times afterwards. And it's a beautiful park. But when you're running around it in the middle of July, and it's red hot and going up and down them hills, I can assure you, Greenwich Park, you don't want to be in it. But I got a call. I was on my way to the ground, got a call that Laurie wasn't, his injury had not picked up as well as they thought he was going to play against Northampton in the League Cup. I get to the ground, they say you're playing. So I went out, we won 5-1. And that was my first taste of senior football. It was funny because my last game at Chelmsford was against Southend United in the Essex Professional Cup final. My first game for Millwall was against Southend United reserves in the London Midweek League. I mean, you know, that's how crazy football can be at times.
Yeah.
But, and then I had a taste of it, and it wasn't a big crowd. I had about 10 or 11,000 there, but it was a good atmosphere. Somebody else was playing for Northampton, who later became part of my life as a coach, Theo Foley, who was an old Millwall coach with Gordon Jago and also George Graham. So Theo was playing for Northampton at the time. We always reflected on that. He said, I thought I should have saved the goal, he said to me. I said, well, what happened with the 5 we scored then? But he, and then, of course, I went back to the reserves. And the next call up was Blackpool in the league, which was my league debut.
So, sorry, can we just say, like, for those who might not know, Millwall at this point were in what would now be the Championship. Those in the old Division 2.
Yes.
That's a big old step up, isn't it, from where you was at Chelmsford? Although it's a good standard, it's a big step up to go straight into the Championship side.
It is indeed. And especially when you're playing in front of 23,000 that night. Blackpool were top of Division 2 then.
Yeah.
And had quite a star-studded team of ex-internationals and stuff. One guy who played in midfield for him was Gordon Milne, former Liverpool player, Blackpool, or he went on to play for Liverpool as well, and played for England. He was in the '66 World Cup squad. He didn't play, but he was one of those that received a medal as being in the squad. And Gordon, of course, signed me for Coventry City.
Yeah.
Which again is a funny story. But we then realised, or I realised, that I could handle this league. I could handle the atmosphere, because believe you me, it wasn't easy taking over from Alex Stepney. It wasn't easy taking over from Laurie Leslie. Some raw kid from Essex coming in, made a couple of mistakes. And I can assure you, you get stick from the old den, it lives with you. It lives with you. But the fact of it is that if you're going to win them over, this is how you got to do it out on the pitch. There's no other way. I'm not going to entertain them down the pub or have a sing-song with them. It's got to be done out on the pitch. So after a shaky start, I got really good encouragement from the lads, all the lads that were in the team, and from the management, because obviously they knew something I didn't. They thought I was going to be a good goalkeeper. I thought I could be a decent goalkeeper, but it turned out that I wasn't a bad goalkeeper at all. And once I won them over, when I won these supporters over, I mean, absolutely marvellous. You know, it was the place to play, the old den.
Was he like Benny Fenton as a manager? Not just for you, but for the whole team?
Well, I won't say because he found me, but all I will say is that the players he brought in when I joined the football club, Derek Posse, Keith Weller, Dennis Burnett, these were 3 young players at big clubs the two, Posh and Sammy, were at Spurs. Both were on the verge of first team matches. They played in Tottenham's first team during the time, of course, when they had a great Tottenham side. A lot of big names. Both had played for Spurs first team. Both had played in Europe and the league. Dennis Burnett was part of the West Ham side that won the European Cup Winners' Cup in '65. Was it 64 or 65? Anyway, he'd been part of the West Ham side, playing alongside Bobby Moore. Very, very good footballer. As of course was the Poss he could sense when a goal was around, and he's a great finisher. Keith Weller was probably the best player I ever played with at Millwall.
Well, funny you should say that. My dad always says to me that Keith Weller, in his opinion, was the greatest player. He said he was better. He said he loved Posse. He said Keith Weller was the best.
Well, there were two different players. The Posh was an out-and-out striker.
Yeah.
Keith was a number 10. He could finish. He could set up play. His all-round passing was brilliant. He could see things that others couldn't. And he was a class footballer. He really was. There was no danger that he was going to go further. And that showed for me what Benny Fenton was and had become a good judge of a player, obviously.
And obviously the club must have had some ambition at this point to be going out to getting these young players in from lots of bigger clubs.
He said exactly when he sat at home with me in my house, he said exactly what he was going to do, and he done it. He went out and he got young players, and he used to be out every night of the week watching matches, Benny. And the Southern League was a good league to watch. He then told me, he said, I've been watching you 10 times before I made my final decision. He said, I saw you at places you'd have never known. I was standing with a cloth cap on and an overcoat. He said, I wouldn't sit in the director's box. I'd go and stand on the terrace. And that's the way he worked. He used to go to Tottenham reserves and West Ham reserves and all these reserve teams. And the same with Bryan when he got in from Chelsea, young lad, watched him in the reserves. It was funny that the big centre half, of course, who become my big roommate and one of my big mates at Millwall, the one and only Barry Kitchener. I played against Barry at Southend Victoria Park in an international tournament. He was playing for Millwall and I was playing for Chelmsford. We drew 2-2 that day. I didn't know Barry Kitchener. He didn't know me. We shook hands, I dare say, after the game and thought no more of it. I played against Posse and Weller and Dennis Burnett in the Metropolitan League, which was for West Ham A team, Tottenham A team, Ipswich Town A team, Charlton Athletic A team, Arsenal A team. That was a good reserve league as well. When I weren't playing Southern League, I was playing in that league. And, I'd played against Poss, I played against Keith Weller, Dennis Burnett, played against Kitch at this youth tournament. And it was funny that 3 years later, we're all teammates. Yeah. And I've been playing against them. I knew where they were, but we never ever thought we were going to finish up playing in the same first team. And Millwall was the team.
And it was a team that was together for the core of it. I was looking through the archives earlier. The core of it, you all went for Alan Dawley coming, I think, a year later or so. And then that core of that team, like you said, the ones you mentioned, Kitch, Posse, Burnett, Weller and yourself, like you stayed together for a good few years.
Yes, and then, of course, I think the other thing what people don't give dear old Benny credit for was all those players were bought for paltry sums, really. He paid $5,000 for me. He paid $15,000 for Dennis Burnett, $15,000 for Keith Weller, $25,000 for Poss. He got Kitch, of course, was a young player then. Bryan was free, was on a free transfer. Players that came afterwards, young Gordon Hill, who played. He played towards the end of my time at Millwall, but he got Gordon for a set of kit, I think from Slough Town or somewhere like that in the Isthmian League. But he worked hard at looking for new players, Benny. And as I say, he was a good judge. He was a good judge. He must have been to get me.
I was looking up. Obviously, I've looked him up. But I've done a lot of these interviews, but I've not done many where people have been from before my time for not any reason. And it's a lot more harder for me to engage because obviously I didn't see your place. I'm fascinated today looking all back through it. Benny Fenton actually played for Millwall as well.
He did.
And he said, I've got it here. He says he played for 8 years, right? He scored 20 games and 7 goals. Well, but everywhere else he's been, he scored loads. And I'm thinking, was he injured for all that time? Like, why didn't they get rid of him? I've realised it was the war years.
It was the war years, of course.
War years, yeah. I couldn't work it out for ages, and I've realised it was the war years.
Yeah, and when you think of all those great players that were playing in the end of the 40s and the 50s, I mean, it was a tough time for them. And of course, it was maximum wage. But he was a good manager, Benny. I mean, I don't know whether he was a good coach, but he always had good coaches with him.
Who was his assistant?
A fella called Jimmy Andrews, Andy Nelson, who won the championship with Alf Ramsey at Ipswich. He was a good coach. Laurie Leslie worked as a coach there. Jimmy Barrett, ex-West Ham. Jimmy Andrews, who was at Chelsea and QPR and West Ham as a coach. Everybody was very close in those days, all the old players, and they were good coaches. Benny was a good manager. Benny put us together. And when I look back at that team, those young players he brought in, Eamon Dunphy, who was a young player from Man United, cost $8,000, I think he did. Dear old Billy Neal, who's still around, and the Billy Neal Lounge. Marvellous servant to Millwall Football Club, over 60 years as a player, as a coach, commercial department, and heart, soul for Millwall Football Club, as we all have in actual fact. I still go down to Millwall. I do the sponsors lounges. I've raised money for the food hub. I've helped the community centre there, who are doing a great job as well. Especially the food hub and the Millwall Community Trust, which Sean Daly runs. I mean, it makes me want to keep involved with Millwall Football Club. And I've been in football now, over 60 years.
Yes.
And I still love going down to the Den. I still love feeling that Millwall family around me.
You're coming back home December, are you?
Yes, I'm going to do, I think I'm doing the lounge. I've done the lounge twice this year. I've done Sheffield Wednesday. I've done Preston.
Well, you've got to come back now. We won both those games 3-0.
Pardon?
I said we won both those games 3-0.
I know. So they say, well, come back for the Coventry game. And if I do, I'll probably be there for the week, and I'll see the Sheffield United game and then go home for Christmas.
Yeah.
Saying go home. But anyway, maybe we should get back to what happened at Millwall and us.
Yeah, so sorry, the first, we spoke briefly off air. I showed you some bits behind me and you showed me some bits that you've got. And I said, I've got this photo. This is obviously the year you joined.
Yes, I've got that photo as well.
It's the year you joined. So you said you wasn't actually in was you in the reserves at that point?
I was in the reserves at that point. That picture was taken prior to the first game in the 67-68 season. I got in the first team that season.
Yeah.
But for that picture, in the old days, that was probably going to be the starting lineup for the first game of that season.
Yeah.
It's a famous picture in more than one way.
I never realised until you pointed it out to me.
Well, I am not in it, but there's also a mishap by one of the players. Eamon Dunphy forgot to put his slip on under his shorts, and there was something in the picture that shouldn't have been in the picture.
I was crying. He showed me. Told me.
Eamon's appendage was on display, but it wasn't noted until the first game of the season, when the Football League review used to be inside the programme, and of course, Benny wanted everything right. I mean, shirts, shorts, socks, everybody sitting in the right position. Great picture. But then, of course, somebody said to him, "Have you seen this, Ben?" "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, look at this, boss. We're not sure what this is here." "Good God," he said, "what is it?" Harry said, we think it's Harry's cock." to which Benny said, "What? Stop. We've got to get all the programs in. We've got to stop this. Hang on a minute, Ben. There's 92. There's going to be at least 45 home clubs who've got the Football League review within their program, because that was a standard thing they'd done."
Yeah.
And he said, "We've got to stop it. We've got to stop them all. This can't be possible.
Stop production.
Stop the press." But that photo was a new photo was done not long afterwards, actually, which I was in. But I can assure you that everybody was dressed correctly. It was only that Eamon got caught in traffic. He was really struggling for time to get to the ground. And he shot in, shorts on, shirt on, socks on, boots on, and out. And that was it. Never thought again. But that picture, of course, became quite famous.
Talking about kit and slips and things like that, you made, obviously, for those who won't know or don't know, should do, you are Millwall's all-time record appearance holder for a goalkeeper. And just looking through the stats and the years, you just didn't miss a game once you was in. Hardly ever missed a game. But it's unbelievable because football was different then. There was no gloves for a goalkeeper. The pitches were cut up badly. There was very small squads. So it must have been like to do what you did was outrageous. What was it like being covered in mud? And I think you told me the other day about a story when you was at Derby away, but no gloves. When did the gloves come in?
You always wore gloves. I wore them in the Southern League, and people wore them before. We had these string gloves. There's actually a picture of them. I can show you on the Lion King book. As you can see, those gloves cost 5 shillings a pair. And
sorry, how much is 5 shillings? How much would 5 shillings be in today's money?
50p.
Oh, okay.
But I was lucky. I used to buy a box of 20 from the Army and Navy stores in Bishop Stortford, and Millwall paid for them. But dear old Jack Blackman kept them under lock and key. We were only allowed 2 pairs, and it was his final opinion if you had to have a new pair. But I always used to get quite superstitious and think these things are hanging off my bloody hands here, and but they always done the job. But we only wore them when it was wet. You never wore gloves when it hadn't been raining.
Because the pitches as well were so badly covered, you're not going to get your hands trampled on, and got no protection back then either. People flying in with elbows and things like that.
When you went for crosses, you knew you had to protect yourself. You either got your knees up or your elbows sharpened up, because you knew you were going to get clumped. Yeah. And centre forwards in them, there were some hard centre forwards in them days, I can assure you of that. Andy Lockhead, Sammy Morgan, Alfie Wood, Brian Conlon, that type of centre forward, physical centre forwards. So you used to get rattled, and it learned you. When we we never had goalkeeper coaches. The goalkeepers worked together. And to be fair to Laurie, what he taught me and how he worked me hard. But I always thought afterwards, he's teaching me to take his place. What kind of man's that? He's a great goalkeeper. He was a great goalkeeper, probably one of the bravest goalkeepers that ever played the game. Played for Scotland, played for West Ham, played for Stoke. I mean, he was a really brave goalkeeper, Laurie, and he taught me that, although he wasn't the best at coming for crosses because he wasn't the biggest, but he taught me to use my height. He taught me to use my size, and above all, he taught me to use my mouth.
How tall are you, Brian? Sorry, how tall are you?
Pardon?
How tall are you?
6'3".
Oh, very nice.
There's a famous picture in the Evening Standard or the Evening News in the old days of Mickey Purser and Ben and me standing just holding the crossbar as such. I think I can't remember what the headline was, but it was the giant who's going to master the den or something of that nature, you know. But the other thing was I had good hands. You know, I could catch stuff, whether it be a cricket ball, a tennis ball, a football, table tennis ball, I could catch it. And I had big hands, you know. Big hands, big head. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it. I shouldn't have been sat in the front row. Thank God for that. Mum, thank God. God bless her. But when you were saying about playing a lot of games, I mean, I think I played 220 on the trot.
Yeah,
I never missed. I think I missed 3 games in 5 years or something like that, which is when I think of what I played with as well. I broke fingers, I broke ribs, I broke my nose, I lost teeth at West Brom. You know, but they had things called cortisone injections, which we were told that you'll be all right. Don't worry, we'll get this in there, you'll be all right. In your knee or your thigh or your groin or your calf, your ankle, your hands. And of course we played because you didn't have any pain for at least a couple of hours. You certainly had pain afterwards, which would result in you probably having another lot. But
yeah.
I look at it now and I see how the game has changed with concussion.
Yeah.
We played Cardiff City on a Friday night, and they had a very famous centre forward called John Toshak, who played for Liverpool and Wales, and then later went on to manage Real Madrid. But I got kicked in the face at Ninian Park quite badly, and it knocked me out. Dear old Jack and the Magic Sponge come on. I come round, bit groggy, played on, we drew 2-2. But I was going in the shower and I thought I tripped over something and fell, but I just passed out. So they whipped me up to the Cardiff and General Hospital, where I spent Friday night and Saturday in hospital bed. To be fair to Tosh and Brian Clark and Jimmy Schooler, the manager, they all come up and see me and wish me well and stuff. Then I got a phone call on the Sunday morning from Benny. Obviously Jack Blackman and the club doctor had rang to see how I was. So Benny, how are you, son? I believe you're coming back to London today. Your train tickets booked and all this stuff. You know, you'll have a car to take you home. I said, yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. He said, oh, that's good. He said, you're playing against Huddersfield on Monday night.
Well, the first team or reserve?
Yeah, the first team.
Oh, I just thought because it's a Monday night, it's a bit of a random game to be on, yeah.
You know, so it was concussion. I had 2 days in hospital. That was enough of that, according to him. He said, you'll be soft if you spend any more time away from the game, he said. So you play, don't you?
Yeah.
And afterwards you think, well, if you had got another knock in the face or on the head, you don't know what would have happened. But you never thought about it, really, you know.
Just go on with it.
You never thought about it. You just went out and you wanted to play, didn't you? You wanted to play. But I shouldn't have played, but there you go again.
How'd you go against Huddersfield?
We won 1-0, I think.
Clean sheet.
Yeah, clean sheet. And, you know, it just things like that. We played Middlesbrough when Jack Charlton was manager there. Big Stuart Bohm, the centre-half, was as big as Ketch and as rough as Ketch. He come in on the back post and I broke 3 ribs, you know. Oh, he really done me with his knees, and that was painful. And that's the first time I missed a game then. I missed a game. They brought Steve Sherwood in from Watford. And he played in the cup and they drew 1 each. Then he played in the league against Notts County, and they drew 3-3. He had a nightmare. So I'm in on the Monday, and Benny says, "How are you?" I said, "Well, it's sore, you know what I mean? I broke 3 ribs." He said, "But you can play tomorrow, can't you?" So I said, "Well, I don't know, can I?"
So yeah, well, it's a lot of question, didn't it?
He said, "We got a replay against Bolton Wanderers at Bolton. So you're going to travel up with us." I said, "Well, are you sure?" He said, "We'll tape you up. You'll be all right." Sure enough, they taped me up. They didn't tell me after the game. We won 2-1. They didn't tell me after the game they were going to remove the tape by rolling it back onto the reel that they put it on. So it was a slow process of taking the... Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh. And a very famous centre forward who was working up at Bolton called Nat Lofthouse. Yeah. He was a great England centre forward and won the FA Cup for Man U. Tough. He was really tough, old-fashioned centre forward. He said to me, "Well played, son. What have you done?" I said, "Well, I broke 3 ribs in that." He said, "Oh, you're lucky." He said, "You're lucky because if I'd have been playing against you, you'd have broke the bleeding lot." And I quite believe that, because when you see that cup final, when he put Harry Gregg in the back of the net and Bolton won the FA Cup final, you would understand what kind of man he was.
Oh, did he not the goal? I think I've seen that. The goalkeeper had goal.
Yeah. Harry Gregg pushed
it up in the air and he just charged in, didn't he?
And he put ball and player in the net. And
he gets given, didn't he? It gets given as a goal.
Oh yeah, but he was a fantastic man, you know, and an iconic player for England and also for Bolton Wanderers.
He said to me the other day on the we had a chat on the phone. You said to me about when you played at Derby.
Oh, blimey, yeah. He we drew 3 each. And we were 3-0 down at half time, and the pitch was terrible. I mean, Derby were on the up then, Cloughie and all that stuff, you know. And the pitch was horrendous. The old baseball ground was horrendous. I come in at half time and 3-0 down, covered in mud. I mean, you were covered in mud. Needed fresh gloves. I needed a new jumper. I needed new shorts. Didn't have time really to change socks or anything. But the bell goes and you get the call to go out for the second half. And I went out. I was following Keith Weller. And there's an old boy, an old steward stood just outside the door, you know, who would let people in and out and all this kind of thing. And he said to me, as I walked past him, he went, "All the best, son." So I turned around to him and I said, "What'd you say that for?" He said, "Well, you can't be any worse than that twat in the first half." so that was quite good advice. He said something else, to be fair, but as I'm being polite on television, you can guess the words he used.
Yeah. So he thought you obviously done the first half in like a green kit.
Yeah.
Half in a different
he thought they brought somebody else in. Luckily, we drew 3 each, and Keith Weller scored 2 goals that day. But you know, that was a story that made me feel better.
You saying earlier about when you joined Millwall and you got the bus, the train. How old was you when you joined Millwall? Was you
19?
Then eventually, obviously, you got your driving license. Or did you move over that way, or did you always commute?
No, I commute because I tell you, who used to travel up from Colchester was Bobby Hunt, who was playing centre forward then. And we used to meet at Liverpool Street. And then we would invariably travel from Liverpool Street, Whitechapel, Aldgate East, Whitechapel, New Cross Gate, and walk down to the Den. And we'd either be training over at Deptford Park, very rarely trained on the Den. We used to do our running around the Den, but if we were going to play five-a-sides or small-sided games, it would always be over Deptford Park. And later we went to Senegal Fields, which is now where the new Den is, of course. But in those days, used to send the apprentices over to pick up the glass that might be laying around and the dog shit that would invariably be laying around. So I can assure you, I've come in from several trainings with a nice Richard on my elbow or on the back of my jumper.
Unbelievable. Talking about the players you played with, we touched on them briefly and said they're brilliant players, but what were they like as individuals? Let's start with the main man, Kitch. What was he like? He's a good mate of yours, was he?
Well, as I say, he was my roommate for 8 years. For me, if anybody deserved, people used to say to me before I actually got called up for England that you're the best uncapped goalkeeper in the country. Well, he was the best uncapped centre half then, because he was a colossus. I mean, brave. We played Bristol City at home, and he headed the ball away, coming in on the near post, and John Galley, the centre forward, big strong boy as well, came in and Kitch caught the full force of his boot in his face, in his mouth actually. And he turned around to me and he said, "Kiggy, what's the damage?" I said, "Expensive by the look of it." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you know you had teeth, well, you ain't got 4 of them at least."
Jesus.
He'd lost the 4 central front teeth because he always had his dentures, and which he took out when he played after that. But he said, "Oh, bloody hell." He said, "My brother's getting married next week." He said, what am I going to look like? And as I said to him, "Well, you're going to look a picture, that's for sure. Keep your mouth shut." He'd lost 4 teeth. Four teeth.
I bet he played on as well, did he?
Of course he did. Of course he did. He stuck a wet sponge in his mouth, and once the bleeding stopped, he just got on with it.
Wow.
And somebody said, "What?"
So apparently, he was completely different off the pitch.
He was a giant. He was the nicest bloke you'd ever want to meet. He was a kind man, and you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him, by the way, because if them teeth went in the handkerchief, I would suggest you put the lights out and lay on the floor, because Kitch could look after himself. Don't worry about that, and he'd look after others. I've had a couple of run-ins with him when I've come late for a cross and caught him with my knees or whatever, or my fist has hit me on the back of the head. He would say, you know, "Can't you call just a bit earlier?" Jesus Christ! And, but he was a good leader. He was a good leader. He had one bad habit: he smoked.
Did he?
Used to drive me mad. Used to drive me mad.
Do you know what I was going to ask you? Say we spoke about the amount of games that you played, and you 77 now.
I'm 77 now. Yeah.
You look for your age. You look unbelievable. I'm not just saying that. Look, so all this constant games, small squads, injuries. Did you look after yourself? Was going to be my question. Like as players, did you look after yourself diet wise? And because obviously it was different back then.
No. You know my favourite dinner.
Good.
Liver and bacon.
Or pre-match.
Lovely. No, I've never had it pre-match, but there's a funny story. Terry Venables tells it about Jimmy Greaves. They come from Dagenham. They travel together to Chelsea. Jimmy was obviously an experienced player. Terry was a younger player. And they stopped in a cafe on the way to Stamford Bridge. And Jimmy says to Terry, "Do you want to have something to eat for the game?" And Terry said, "Well, I usually have a bit of boiled chicken or something like that, or a bit of fish." "Oh," he said, "look, I always have my pre-matches: roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, roast potatoes, all the lot on the plate." He said it, and Terry said he ate the lot. I had my little bit of fish. He said, "We got the game. Game finishes, we win 5-1. Greavesy scored 4 goals." He said, "I sat on my own," he said, "in the dressing room, and I thought, I'm eating the wrong food here."
Yeah,
you know. And it was the same with us. We had steaks. We used to use fillet steak. I mean, it's the worst. You couldn't digest a fillet steak at 12:30. You're going to play at 3. But that's what we had. Some players had chicken towards as from 67 to 77, right through to 75. I always had steak. Always had a piece of steak and some toast. I always fancied a bit of apple pie as well, but you couldn't have that. Used to put your order in with Jack.
Who was the
Someone
worst?
that fit. Pardon?
Sorry, mate. Who was the worst for like eating habits and not looking after himself?
Well, funnily enough, a funny story. We went to Blackpool to play them, and it got postponed because there was some snow and the pitch got frozen. So we were staying in, I think it was the Norbreck Hydro on the front of Blackpool. So that particular night, we knew we weren't going to play the next day, but we're going to have to travel back to London the next day. We had a potato eating contest. I mean, boiled potatoes. Keithy Weller, 27. 27 boiled potatoes. No one got anywhere near him. I mean, after about 8 or 9, you want to sling it in, didn't you?
They're horrible boiled potatoes, aren't they?
But I mean, I think we put a pound in each. There's about 18 quid in the pot, and Keith walked away with it after 27 boiled potatoes. I mean, it's a Guinness Book of Records job, that, isn't it?
Wow, unbelievable.
But we, of course, after the game, you'd always have a good meal after the game if you were coming back which we then used to, because we used to travel first class on the train if you're going up north, anywhere up north, Middlesbrough, or Manchester, or Blackpool, or any of these places. You'd always come back on the Pullman trains, and you used to get really good food on there. So all the lads ate well, and some of them could drink well as well. I mean, I wasn't a big drinker, but we all liked a pint. And as you could say, there was a few professional footballers at Millwall who could have been professional drinkers. I'm not going to name them because it might come back on them in later days. But they all like to drink. Some of them more than others. I had a very good friend who had a pub. I got friendly with him, who had the Crown and Anchor, which was at New Cross High Road. A fellow called Greg Tarrant. And myself and my wife got quite friendly with him and his wife. That was a Millwall pub. It was 5 minutes from the ground, really. Right at the end of New Cross High Road, Old Kent Road. It was Crown. I think it's a Chinese restaurant now. I'm not sure, but
I know what you mean.
I nearly cried my eyes out when I went past the Thomas à Becket, because being at Millwall, we used to get a few boxers come down and do some work with us as well. The famous Cooper twins were down there. Dennis Waterman's brother, Peter Waterman, who was a very good boxer.
Oh, was he?
We also went to the Thomas à Becket when Muhammad Ali was doing some training there. We went to see him there. As I say, I was coming down the Old Kent Road not so long ago, and I said, we're quite near the Becket, aren't we? Yeah, the Becket's still here, but it's now a Vietnamese takeaway. I couldn't believe it. I had to get an handkerchief out because, I mean, what great memories we had there.
Yeah.
Going to see some of these boxers training for big fights, and spending time there ourselves as well, and building a team, as you say.
Yeah, it's a team that you used together a long, long time. And obviously, like say you said, people said that Barry Kitchen could have gone on. You could have got what you did go on after Millwall. With the Wellers, the Posses. Do you maybe underachieved as a team under Fenton? Because I was looking through the league tables, you saw come 10th, 8th, 11th. The 1 year was the one that everyone still talks about. It's the year you come third. On the last day, was it Birmingham picked promotion?
Well, it was on the last day we were actually promoted, but they had an extra game, and if they lost it or drew it, we were up, but they won it at Leyton Orient. I don't think we underachieved. I think we had to sell players as we went along. If we'd have had Keith Weller in that team, I feel sure we'd have certainly been first or second in that league, and we wouldn't have had to worry about Birmingham City.
Yeah,
he was such a good player. But Keith, of course, had left and moved on to Chelsea, where he won the European Cup Winners' Cup with them.
Wow.
And that only emphasises the fact that if he'd have stayed with us, I'm sure we would have got in the first division. But
what was it like? Was it like playing that game, winning it, and then you obviously got to wait for the Birmingham result? Was it the next day or something?
Horrendous. We were, I don't know whether you've seen the film from the last game against Preston. So many people on the pitch. It was one of those, wasn't it? They think it's all over. Well, it was for us because we won it. And then by the time we got in the dressing room, the score that we'd heard was wrong. It was not 2-1 to Sheffield Wednesday. It was 2-1 to Birmingham.
Oh, my God.
Which meant we then had to wait until the Tuesday night. This was the Saturday. We then had to wait till the Tuesday night when Birmingham had the extra game because they'd had a good cup run. They lost to Leeds in the FA Cup semi-final. It was a terrible wait. The euphoria in the dressing room for 10 minutes was unbelievable. Everybody, such a long, hard season, and then that result comes in. And then you start thinking, how the hell did we drop points against Swindon and Oxford at home?
Yeah, it's like thinking about individual.
How did we lose at Burnley? How did we lose at Fulham? Just 2 more points and we're there. We were there all season. We were first or second the whole season. And I think when Keith was there as well, before he went to Chelsea, we were pretty high up all season. We were certainly in the top 4 the year Crystal Palace went up. And at one stage during that season, we actually led the league. We were top of the league.
The league was, I'll put it on, you won't see it now, but I'll put it on the screen for the edit. Norwich won the league with 57 points. Birmingham went up on 56. We had 55. QPR had 54.
Yeah.
That is so tight, isn't it? And obviously no playoffs then either.
No playoffs. But the following year, 3 teams went up.
Yeah. It must have been so frustrating.
Everybody was saying, we'll be in the money, we'll be this, that. None of that team worried about the money at that stage. We wanted to play in the first division because I think we'd have done well in the first division because we proved that we could compete against first division teams. We'd knocked first in Premier League, now Premier League sides out of the cup. We got to the year before that, we got to the quarterfinals and lost on a replay in the League Cup again to Norwich City, who went on to play Tottenham, I think, in the final, or Aston Villa, one of those. But it was a strange experience. But all that year's hard work. But when you look back at the points we dropped, where we should have just, we were good enough to beat any team in that league, and we did. Big gates. Exciting goals.
The goals, just the amount of goals going in for it. Yeah, we're written down like one year. I think Harry Cripps scored 10 from left back.
Yeah, well, Harry used to cheat in the box. He used to pull shirts and tell people they left the gas on, and this stuff. He was famous for escaping his marker, Harry.
What was he like as a character? But people say like he was, him and Kitchener were both obviously massive Mill legends. I think it might be my dad said to me, Kitchener was, and Cripps was, but Cripps was more of a cheeky, funny character. He was
a Charlie Chester, Harry. You know what I mean? He could tell a joke, he could tell you a story, and at the end of it, you'd think, is that true or not? But his enthusiasm, once he got to the ground and he was in the dressing room, his enthusiasm was infectious. I mean, he was Millwall, Harry. He'd come from West Ham as a youngster. He played with the great players. He joined West Ham when all the great players were joining West Ham. Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, Bobby Moore, and all these people were his mates. They were his mates, and Harry went on to a. Sorry,
I got that wrong. I didn't. When I said people said he weren't a legend, it wasn't that. I can't remember who told me this story. Said people said Kitch was an hard man and Harry was an hard man, but Kitch Harry would start trouble and run an eye behind Kitch or stuff like that.
Well, Harry was not an art. He was an hard footballer. He was a tough footballer, but as they say, Harry was a lover, not a fighter. He would, as you say, if you had Big Kitch and a silly big goalkeeper alongside Big Kitch, if something went off when we were out, the saying for Kitch was, he'd either say to Bryan, put these in your pocket, and that was his front teeth, and he'd say, Kingy, if he gets busy, start swinging them around like you're doing at Goalmouth, and we'll move on from here. But Harry was a great Millwall servant. You can't take that away from him. And as I say, he got the testimonial he deserved. They played West Ham. It's a big night. West Ham sent their full team, and I think we won 3-2. I think, but it was a great night and a great testimony to Harry. The 15,000 people turned up to honour a Millwall legend, and he was. And Kitch, Kitch was Kitch. I mean, he was a colossus. We got picked for an FA 11 to play against an Egyptian League 11 in Cairo.
Right.
And we arrived there, and of course this was in April, boiling hot. And straight away we're on the balcony, me and Kitch. He's got a cigarette on. We're laying on the balcony. Knock on the door. The FA secretary, Dennis Follows, said, I went and answered the door, and he said, look, there's a tour going to visit the pyramids downstairs in half an hour if you want to come. So I shouted through the Kitchies on the balcony, Kitch, Dennis Follows here, the secretary. He said, if we want to go and see the pyramids, we've got to be downstairs in half an hour. He said, no. He said, we don't bother. Tell him we can see him from here. And we could actually from our balcony.
Oh, really?
So we never went. But, of course, we regretted it. It would have been great to have gone and seen them. But there you go. That's footballers in that.
Yeah, he's too busy sunbathing.
Well, Christ, we haven't had any sun. You know what I mean? It's April in England.
Yeah,
we've been playing in mud, rain, and all sorts, and cold weather. So it's nice to feel a bit of sun.
Saying about that season where you finished third after that, it's sort of, you said that the squad broke up, and I see a couple of names come in. Derek Smedhurst, was he?
No, Derek Smedhurst was with the team when we just missed out. Derek was a good player.
Was he South African?
South African, come from Chelsea.
Yeah.
A very good player, a very good underrated player, Derek. But he came into that squad which just missed out.
Right, and then you got Alf Wood. He's come in scoring loads of goals.
Alf come in after that. Alf again started off as a centre half at Man City. England youth player. Went to Shrewsbury. Benny bought him from Shrewsbury, as he bought Bryan Conlon from Darlington. I mean, these became typical English centre forwards. I mean, Alf he wasn't the biggest Alf. He was about 5'10" Alf, but what a leap he had on him, and brave as a lion. He was brave as a lion, and so we used to call Bryan Conlon Percy, and he was the same. I mean, he came down from the northeast. I think he sold his house for about 800 quid up there, and came down, and he was looking for a semi-detached. He said, "I'm looking for a semi-detached on Blackheath." So dear old Jack said, "Well, you won't get one for 800 quid up there." He said, but yeah, Percy was an old-fashioned centre forward. Alf Wood was a good centre forward. I mean, He was a class centre forward, Alf. Believe you me, he was as tough as nails, mate.
So I was looking through the history files, and like obviously Keith Weller was there, and then Posse's the year Alf Wood sort of started scoring, Posse sort of stopped a little bit. I don't know if that was down to his age or something like that. And he said that Alf Wood 18 goals one season, 23 the next.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Well, we had players there. We had dear old Barry Bridges, who was another one. I mean, England international, Chelsea, Birmingham City, QPR. Top centre forward. Him and Posh were probably the best pairing that we had.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember how many they scored between them, but it was a lot of goals. And they just gave us. They both had pace. Both brave, could finish, and it was an honour to call them teammates because they were quality, all of them.
In the next season, the 70, well, you'll be able to tell me the year, so I've not got it. Oh, I have, 72, 73 is the famous cup win, Everton away. Harry Cripps, 2 goals.
No, Harry Cripps 1 goal, Alfie Wood 1 goal.
Oh, was it?
You check that up. I think you'll find Alfie Wood scored 1 and Harry got 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll look into it.
My memory for football is quite good. It's for anything else it struggles.
Well, my excuse was I wasn't born, but I have researched it. I have seen the video on YouTube. I don't know in my head. I thought he got 2, but yeah, I think you obviously you was there. You're right. But a big win that for the club. Great FA Cup.
It was a big win because Everton were a big team then.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Again, the pitch was horrendous. I would say probably for 45 minutes, it was the best 45 minutes I'd ever played for Millwall Football Club.
Oh, really?
Somebody said we should have been 6-0 down at half-time. And in the first 2 minutes, I made a double save from Joe Harper, the Scottish international, from very close range, a header. And then he got up and hit a shot from 4 yards out, which I, again, blocked. With the help of my particulars. But, you know, those 2 saves kept us in the game as such. After 2 minutes, they should have been 1 up.
Yeah.
And that followed by another 4 or 5 clear chances they had. Rod Belfit, Joe Harper, Howard Kendall. You know, all had good chances, which I managed to keep out. And we survived 0-0 at half-time. We went in, second half, they scored a goal. And we thought that was it. But that was offside. That was given offside. I think it was Joe Harper who scored that. But it was offside, so we lived to fight another day.
Yeah.
And then we scored our 2 goals. And it was a memorable win. Everything went wrong prior to it. The train was late arriving in Liverpool.
Really?
We had no pre-match as such. We had sandwiches.
Well, when you made so many saves, it's a bit lighter from no steak.
Well, I think I realised then it was a mistake to have a steak. But no, it was obviously going back on the train afterwards. We ate plenty and drunk plenty. No, it was amazing. It was amazing, and to get through the 6th round of the cup, we should have beat Wolves. To be honest,
what division were Wolves in at that point? Were Wolves in the?
Oh, they were in the top division, mate. They were in the top division.
So, yeah.
They had 2 of the best strikers in the country. They had big Derek Dugan, and they had a fellow called John Richards, who was also an England international. The Doog was a Northern Ireland international, played with George Best and Pat Jennings. But they had Peter Knowles, who later became a Jehovah's Witness. He was the brother to Cyril, who played at Tottenham. Funnily enough, he came in the dressing room before the game and presented presented. He asked if he could make a little speech, and we didn't know what was going on. And he started on about Jehovah's Witnesses, to which Kitch, who was getting dressed and had just had his fag in the toilet, come in and said, "What's he want?" And they said, "He's telling us about Jehovah's Witness. Listen, mate, do yourself a favour, see the door, go through it. We'll see you out on the pitch."
So before the game, he tried to preach to you about.
Yeah. I mean, couldn't believe it.
That is so strong. I'm not saying anything about religion or about it. It's just to do it at that point.
No, exactly. But to be fair to Peter, he was a top player, by the way, he joined the Jehovah's Witness program, and he left football. He was an England under-23 international.
Well, because he was that
top player for Wolves. Turned his back on football. I wish he turned his back when we was out on the pitch. We got beat 1-0. John Richards scored the goal. But we played really well.
This is also the year you got your England call up.
Well, prior to that, the PFA had started something which they picked the best teams in each division.
Yeah.
The first year was 72-73, which I was selected for. You can see the teams, actually, if you go on to the PFA website.
Yeah. You
can see the teams. That was the first year it was put on. 72-73, I think it was. Then 73-74, I got in the team again. And goalkeepers in the league then, of course, were Jimmy Montgomery, Alex Stepney, Alan Stevenson, Peter Mellor. All international goalkeepers. And I got voted the best goalkeeper in Division 2 for the first 2 years that award was, and it's still running. I mean, I believe I'm only one of 10 players that have been selected for the PFA awards from Millwall.
Right.
Again, these are things I've been told. I know John Jackson got selected as a goalkeeper in Division 3. Ray Evans has been selected. Alex Ray was selected a couple of times. Tim Cahill. Dave Mehmet, I think. And this kind of players, this standard of player. So I was very honoured to be the name to be brought in for that 2 years on the trot.
Yeah. And
then the following year I moved to Coventry.
So you got the England call up. You actually was in the squad for England.
I was in the squad for England, yeah. I've been in 2 or 3 squads when Peter Bonetti got injured, or Gordon Banks or Chilton or Clements had got injured. I've been called in as you
just said a name there, Peter Bonetti. My dad hates Peter Bonetti.
Yeah.
He let him really silly goals one against Germany.
He certainly did. He had a bad game against Germany, but he was a marvellous servant to Chelsea.
Yeah. So you was actually in the England squad. You got a shirt from that, and you was on against Portugal. Was it? You were on the bench.
I was on the bench. Phil Parkes was the goalkeeper that day. That was the initial selection. Me and Phil Parkes were the goalkeepers. He was with QPR. I was with Millwall. Some people sometimes question whether playing for Millwall could have been a bit of a hold back. I don't know. I wouldn't like to think that. But I did realise I was as good as what Phil Parkes was.
Yeah. Did you ever get offers to leave Millwall during your time there, like other offers before you did eventually leave?
Yeah. There were 2 or 3 clubs that inquired about me. Leeds inquired, Everton inquired, Arsenal inquired. But Benny and the board were not prepared to let me go at that time. But they were prepared to let other players go. Dennis Burnett, Derek Posse, Keith Weller. It seemed that me and Kitch were going to be there for the rest of our lives. I know for a fact that Kitch, there was an offer for Kitch at the same time as an old pal of mine called Larry Lloyd, who was at Bristol Rovers. I played with Larry when I was at Coventry. Another good wonderful centre half. And they said that Liverpool were after Kitch.
Really?
And it was between Barry Kitchener and Larry Lloyd. They went for Larry Lloyd. And Kitch, also I heard that Aston Villa were interested in him, and me as well at the same time. They wanted to take the pair of us. But that got knocked back by the club. We got reimbursed, as we say. Our wages were adjusted.
Yeah.
So, in some ways that helped, but the club weren't prepared to let me or him go.
There's a massive compliment in there to you two. If they're prepared to let others go, but they're keeping you two as the core. But did you find it frustrating that you didn't even get the option?
Yeah. Obviously, the clubs that were being mentioned were clubs that went on to win trophies. And, it was a time when Arsenal were being talked about. We were actually at the PFA at the PFA Awards when I got selected for the Division 2 team. Don Howe and Bertie Mee, who was the manager and head coach there, come over to my table just to ask how things were and say congratulations on selection. And then Bertie said, listen, we're going to make an offer for you. So if they say we haven't, we have. And as he said that, Benny came over. And Benny went, what do you talk to my goalkeeper for? Don't you start putting ideas in his head. He said, they fill you with bullshit, Kingy. Ignore it. Don't worry about it. He said, you'll go to the top with Millwall Football Club. And he told Bertie where to go, and also Don Howe.
So eventually, you did leave the club eventually, but am I right in saying we got relegated?
Yeah, we did indeed. It was a transitional period for the club then. We'd lost quite a few players. We had young Gordon Hill in, Ray Evans along with Keith Weller and Gordon Hill. I would say if you had those three players with that 71-72 team,
yeah,
you would have won that league quite easily. But we got relegated. It was not a nice thing to leave. No, Gordon Jago took over at mid-season.
Right.
Gordon took over.
Why did Benny Fenton leave?
Well, they decided that his time was up. He's 9 or 10 years at the club.
Right.
Funnily enough, we beat Bristol City the day after he got the sack. And we'd had a poor period prior to that.
Yeah.
And then shortly afterwards, Gordon Jago came in. Of course, a big name manager from QPR. But we were always struggling. We'd lost the nucleus of the team. We were unlucky to go down, by the way. I mean, Christ, it was on goal difference, I think.
Oh, really? He's still alive, Gordon Jago.
Yeah, I know he lives in America. I saw him not so long ago, Gordon. Anyway, he called me at the end of the season. There were two clubs come in for me. And Gordon said, look, Bryan, we've got no money. The only way we're going to raise money is if we get an offer from you. And if I can get decent money for you, we will then be able to build the side again for the third division. How would you feel about leaving the football club? I said, well, if it's the right club and it's in the first division, that's always been my aim to play in the first division. So, of course, if you're agreeable, etc., etc. Anyway, Ipswich Town, Bobby Robson, Coventry City, Gordon Milne, and funnily enough, the chairman of Coventry City at the time was Jimmy Hill. From all those days back in
Chelmsford, yeah.
Chelmsford. Now Jimmy Hill was the chairman. So Gordon said, look, we're going to accept an offer of, I think it was 75 grand at the end of the day. Would you consider that we gave you a testimonial as well to be played at the Den at the end of the season that I went? So I said, sure. And we're also going to give you a percentage of the transfer fee. And with the transfer fee, he brought in the two boys, Phil Walker and Trevor Lee.
Oh, yeah.
From non-league. He paid, I think he paid about 20 grand for them too. And he brought in a couple of other players. So the money from me provided Gordon to build the team he wanted.
They were good players, though. Trevor Lee and Phil Walker.
Great players. Great players. They came from non-league.
Something like that, wasn't it?
Epsom and Newell, you got it.
Yeah.
Phil Walker, of course, has passed away. God rest his soul. And he was a wonderful footballer, Phil. Wonderful footballer. Trevor Lee was the big bustling front player who would score your goals. And both of them became heroes and got promotion that season from the third division. Which meant that when I came down with Coventry City to play in the testimonial game at the end of the season, Millwall had just got promoted. Coventry was still a first division team. I was recovering from an injury, so I could only play 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
And funnily, that night, Friday night before the cup final, Manchester United, Southampton, dear little Gordon Hill came and kicked the game off before the cup final. He's playing in the cup final next day. He kicked the match off, and Tommy Docherty sent word to Gordon Jago, don't let him play the match because he's playing tomorrow in the cup final.
That's great.
And afterwards, funnily enough, it was the only testimonial game ever to be cancelled, ever to be abandoned after 84 minutes.
Why?
Well, we had a player at Coventry called Dan Nadiello who decided he scored, and that put Coventry 2-1 up. He went and celebrated at Cold Blow Lane end, which was not a wise thing to do, by the way. And within a minute of that, there was more people on the pitch than enough.
What, trying to rip his head off?
Well, they were certainly trying to inflict some kind of damage on him for showing off at the Cold Blow Lane end. To which the players had to leave the pitch and the game was abandoned. And that was the first testimonial that's ever been abandoned. I think it was 12,000 people at the game. And the game was stopped 10 minutes before the end.
So this Coventry player that scored is a teammate of yours. Did you not say to him after, mate, what was you?
No, listen. People said to him when he scored, why didn't you put it over the Cold Blow Lane end stand, for Christ's sake? And certainly do not go and celebrate.
Oh my God.
You know. Well, anyway, we made it to the Prince Albert at the bottom of Blackheath there. And we had a very enjoyable night with the Millwall lads. And again, Greg Tarrant was the owner of that pub, and was eternally grateful for what he'd done that evening. And it was the end of that season. I'd played, I think, 35 games for Coventry, and I got injured. And then the following season, of course, I sustained a very bad injury in the last pre-season match against Wolverhampton Wanderers, would you believe? 8 months later, after I had this, the ligaments in the knee and
cruciates.
The cruciate ligament completely snapped.
Oh.
And I then had an 8-month period of trying to get fit, to which my first game back after 8 months was at the same ground, Molineux, for the reserves against Wolverhampton Wanderers. And we drew 0-0. And my knee got a little bit of a test because Wolves had a centre-forward called Bobby Gould, the old manager.
Yeah, Wimbledon, crazy game, man.
And he warmed me up a couple of times early on. But I didn't feel too bad. It felt okay, but quite a bit of swelling, which then led me to then be asked if I could play in a first team game because Les Seeley and Jim Blythe were both injured at Man City, and I shouldn't have played, but I played, and Big Joe Rawl caught me on the near post. Joe Rawl, who played at Everton and managed many teams. Great friend of mine, Joe, big pal, and we speak every week actually on the phone. We usually have a little laugh and a joke every week on the phone. He sent me his book, I sent him mine, and in his book he put, "I didn't realise I hit you as hard as I did, and I'm still saying sorry for it, big fella. All the best," and all this stuff, But he caught me, and as he caught me on the near post at Coventry, I had a centre half then. I was playing behind 6'2", eyes of blue. Big Jim Holton was playing for Coventry then, after Larry, and I made it to half time. We were winning 1-0. I made it to half time, and by the time I got in, I couldn't believe it. Apparently, one of the cruciate ligaments that had been fixed had broke again. And
I was thinking, even in this day and age, 8 months isn't the operations available. 8 months ain't a lot of recovery time, is it? So imagine back then.
No, but I worked really hard. I mean, I worked hard to get back. I mean, I don't know about my legs, but my upper body, I was so strong, upper body and stuff. But it was an operation that if it was going to be done again in the middle of the 70s, it wasn't the operation to have.
How old was you at this point?
I was 32.
Right. Still for a goalkeeper, not that old.
No. And as the way I was, I had good fitness, never had a weight problem. A decision was made that I would never recover. And of course, insurance money and insurance things for Coventry and for myself, I would have to retire. Or maybe go and try in America, but insurance, you couldn't get insured to play in England again. So a dear friend of mine called Tony Waiters, former England goalkeeper, was managing Vancouver, and he invited me over to see if I could play with one of these North American football leg brace things that they had for the American footballers.
Yeah.
Which I played 6 games for Tony in Vancouver. Wonderful experience to go there, with my missus and the kids. But it wasn't to be. Every time I played, I'd have to sit for 3-4 days with ice on my knee.
It's swelling after, isn't it? It's not
And of course, the old Empire Stadium in Vancouver was the old AstroTurf. It's like an asphalt road, really.
Yeah.
So the decision was that my playing career would come to an end.
It's quite mad. We were saying earlier, with Mill all that time and never got any injuries. I know.
Well,
and then you go to Coventry.
Yeah. Now I know the term of being sent to Coventry. But if only Bobby Robson had called me earlier, I'd have gone to Ipswich without any shadow of doubt.
Didn't they? I was trying to think of the timeline. Didn't they go and win the European Cup? Was that early 80s?
The year after I could have gone there, 2 years after I could have gone there, they won the FA Cup. And then they won the UEFA Cup.
UEFA Cup, that was it. Oh, yeah. Was that 80 or something like that?
1978, 79, wasn't it? Or 80, around there.
That's why I was born in 80, so I don't remember it. But
I've got a grandson there as old as you.
Have you?
Yeah.
I'm 44.
No, he ain't that old. He's 27. No, 28. He's 28.
I'm going to tell as a compliment you thought I looked younger.
Cool, I did. I thought he was about 33.
I'll take that all day long.
Hang on. Oh. My wife said, you've got to go for an eye test. Behave yourself.
Well, mate, listen, it's been absolute brilliant talking to you. We'll keep talking all throughout the show about Millwall legends, but you yourself, in your own right, a Millwall legend, all-time record appearance holder for a goalkeeper. Your book is out and available, and what we're going to do, we're going to put it in the link below. So
it's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about it before we wrap up?
Well, it was a Millwall supporter who asked me all the stories I've got why don't you write a book? I said, well, no one's asked me. He said, well, I'm asking you. His name was Jim Murray. He writes a book called The Whiskey Bible, which he does every year. He's a big Millwall supporter. He brought out the book, The Lions of the South, which is a famous Millwall book. Brilliant book. Great facts and figures in it. Unbelievable. He's a real Millwall supporter. He collects unbelievable Millwall memorabilia. He has big success with the Whiskey Bible. He financed my book. And it turned out to be, along with a guy called Mark Howarth, who wrote it. I told the story and he wrote the story. It sold well. And I never ever thought I'd have a book about myself. This was a save I made against Birmingham City in that wonderful year where we missed out. There are pictures in here.
Oh, that is, I've made a graphic. I've made a graphic for your show. You haven't seen.
But this book is it's over 300 pages and brilliantly written. And I have to thank Jim Murray for putting the money up and organising it to be published. So, yeah, fantastic.
That'll be the graphic when the video goes out. Yeah.
Well, here I've got a Millwall supporter called Rod Liddle, who's a famous newspaper columnist, who writes in it. And I've got to put. Do you know what? If I'd have worn these when I played, I think I'd have been better. He's got here Rod Liddle, a brilliant goalkeeper, a Millwall hero, and a very funny storyteller. And that's Rod Liddle, who's a great Millwall supporter. I've got another one was an insightful view from the heart of the game, Henry Winter, who writes in the Times. Greg who's a big Millwall fan from, I think he does MasterChef.
Greg Wallace.
Greg Wallace. He sent me, he enjoyed the book, as did Gary Oldman and Steve Harley and all these people.
Brilliant.
Danny Baker, I believe. You know, all famous Millwall supporters. And if I can give them a little bit of enjoyment when I played and through the book, then that makes me happy. Makes me humble that people like you, young people, still remember me.
Right, so I said, obviously, I've done through my lifetime players I remember, and everyone keeps saying, best, listen, Keller's all right, Warner's all right, Bryan King, best Millwall goalkeeper. Go get him on the show. Well,
I'm very pleased you asked me, and I'm pleased that we've managed to get contact, and thank you very much. And I'm just I was a long line of great Millwall goalkeepers. I mean, from Reg Davies to Alex Stepney, to myself, to Casey Keller, Tony Warner, Paul Sanson, Brian Horn, who's still a good friend and was a very underrated goalkeeper, Brian. And he was the one that took Millwall up in the first division. And good luck to him. And as I say, the goalkeepers I've named, legendary goalkeepers for Millwall Football Club.
Brilliant. Well, listen, mate, today was your show and I really, really enjoyed it. We're going to put the link to your book in the description below. If people want to buy it, they're watching this when it goes out, you can buy Bryan's book by clicking the link in the description. I will post it on social media, mate, as well. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
I think it's also Jim's company's Little Hell Books, I think it is.
All right, I'll post the Amazon link and I'll post the one for Jim's thing. I'll find them both.
Yeah.
So people
well, Jim does Lions of the South, and he's done the Whiskey Bible for the last 25 years.
Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, mate.
Through and through.
Hopefully, cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.